Hello, anybody, and thanks for tuning in to Monday Morning Handicapping. This is a grain of salt episode where I ask myself a horse racing question and I go through my old racing forums and use online resources to try to come closer to an answer to that question. A lot of variables in horse racing, obviously, so no answers are entirely and forever conclusive, but try to find an edge and point myself in the right direction. As many of you watching this are probably aware of, the Pleasanton meet just ended their 4 weeks, and now the thoroughbreds are off to Sacramento. And before I really did a deep dive into a Sacramento race card, I wanted to take a look at what jockey was doing the best at Pleasanton, who won the jockey title for their 4 week meet, and take a look at his races, his or her races, how they were won, and just really scope out how the rider rides, where he likes to put his horses, the odds at which he wins, and how that differs between sprints and routes. Leading jockey of the Pleasanton 4 week meet was Adrian Castellanos, so we're going to take a look at his riding style profile. We'll see if that sticks, but what I could surmise was he was the leading jockey at Pleasanton in the summer of 2024. At that 4 week meet, he had 15 wins from 52 starts at Pleasanton. When we go into more information throughout these slides, I did also go back and look at how he was racing at Golden Gate prior to Pleasanton. 15 wins from 52 starts equates to a win rate of 29%. So for Adrian Castellanos, what I did was I went back and looked through the charts and saw where he placed his horses, where they were located in the field at the 3/8 or the quarter pole in sprints. For sprints, for 6 furlong, they're going to start about here. 5.5, they're going to start here. And they either use the 3/8 or the quarter pole for different distances, but this red marker indicates about where the 3/8 or the quarter pole is. Quarter pole about here, 3/8 somewhere around here. But it gives you an idea of where he was placing his horses at this part of the race. So they're starting at the green, they run counterclockwise, and then this is where we're going to be focusing where he places his horses. I wanted to pick this place because it gave the jockey enough time to rush his horse up into where he wanted to be if he had a slow start. The race is really unfolding here, so you want to have your horse in good position around here. So this is where we're going to focus, and the finish line never moves. So yeah, it's about halfway through the race in most sprints. So this is where we're going to focus for sprints, where his horse was somewhere in this area. And for routes, they start here just before the finish line, and they can be a little further back. They can be right on the finish line, but ballpark, they start here, they run around, and at the half-mile pole, we're going to take a look at where he placed his horse. Again, it gives him enough time to get him where he wants him before the final run to the finish. When we mention 3/8 or quarter pole, it's about this area of the race for sprints, and then for routes, we're looking around this area heading into the final turn. So let's go ahead and dive right on in. Sprints, a view from the 3/8 or quarter pole between Pleasanton, the 1 week of Sacramento, and going back to Golden Gate. I used a website called Equibase. He had 29 wins. Obviously, I think it was 15 of those at Pleasanton, so he got a little hot during the summer meet. So in his 29 wins, when he was on the lead, meaning he was in first, his average margin at the 3/8 or the quarter pole was 1.1 length. His wins when he was on the lead at that point was 3.4 to 1. 11 of those 29 wins were when he was in first place at the 3/8 or quarter pole, and that equates to 38% of his wins were on the lead in sprints. Front runners, I consider less than a length. The average margin when he was not in first, but less than a length behind the leader, was 0.3 lengths behind the leader, so less than half a horse body behind, so he was pretty much a neck behind. His average odds when he won being less than 1 length behind the leader at the 3/8 or quarter pole was 3.7 to 1. 6 of his 29 wins were from this position at the 3/8 or quarter pole, which equates to 21% of his wins. A presser, I consider 1 length to 3 lengths behind the front runner. The average margin was 1.6, again at the 3/8 or quarter pole, pretty much entering the final stretch. Not too far back, his average win odds on horses like this were 5 to 1. 9 of his wins came when he was 1 to 3 lengths behind the winner at this position, at this point. I'll quit saying that as we go on, but I just want to remind everyone this is where he was at the 3/8 or quarter pole where he had his horses. 31% win rate, from that far back at that position. Closer, 3 lengths or more. He, again, pretty close to that 3 length margin. 3.8 out of his 3 wins were 3.8 lengths behind the leader. Average odds of 3.6 to 1. 10% of his wins came from closing from 3 lengths or more at that position. He never had a win coming from dead last at that position, which I know being on the lead lends itself to more victories. That's just a better spot to be. Obviously, you don't have to pass any horses, and typically when horses are alone on the lead, that's really favors any of their running style. They're not facing pressure. They can kind of go at their own pace. But also, when we go back to Golden Gate, that tends to be maybe a little bit more of a closer-friendly track, especially some days, you'll notice. But he never came from last, which was a little bit of a surprise in sprint races. Some of my takeaways were he had most success on the lead. Again, I know being on the lead lends itself to easier races. 0 wins coming from last in sprint races. His highest average win price in sprints are from pressing, 5 to 1 average, when he's coming from 1 to 3 lengths off the leader, an average of 1.6 lengths, so really not too far back. Likes to just stalk the leader. 90% of his wins come from being an average of less than 2 lengths off the lead. So again, he seems to like to get his horses out and keep them near the front. So if we add up the percentages of wins when he's averaging less than 2 lengths from the leader, so 1.1 on the lead, obviously he's in first. All his front running victories, which is less than 1 length, and all his pressers where he averages 1.6 lengths, so less than 2 lengths off the leader. 31 plus 21 plus 38 are 90% of his wins when he's within 2 lengths of the leader. Closers were his second lowest average odds, meaning his horses were bet and supposed to run well. The public thought all his closers were pretty solid horses and had the talent to close in many of those races. As you can see, his average win odds were 3.6, which is only behind when he's on the lead at 3.4. So he is closing 10% of the time, but his horses are pretty talented that are closing. So whereas the pressers average 5 to 1 odds, 31% win rate. So his horses aren't touted so much by the public. These pressers 1 to 3 lengths off the lead, but are winning at decent odds. So just a couple things that caught my eye. Now we're going to move on to routes. Route to view from that half-mile pole, which is right before entering the far turn. He had 19 wins going back 11 pages on Equibase back to Golden Gate. His average margin when he was in first place was 1.6 lengths ahead of the second place runner. Average win odds of 3.7 to 1. 9 of his 19 wins were on the lead with a win rate of 47% of all of his total wins. Front runner, again, 0.3 lengths were his average margin behind the leader. Average win odds of 6.2 to 1. 2 out of his 19 wins were within 1 length from the leader, 11%. 1 to 3 lengths behind the leader. His average margin was 2.1. Average win odds there, 2.5. Number of wins, 5 out of his 19 wins. 26% of his wins were at that pressing style. Closer, 3 or more lengths at that half-mile pole. Average margin of those wins were 4.3 lengths off the lead. 3.7 to 1 win odds. 3 of those 19 wins were 3 lengths or more. 16% of his wins were closing from 3 or more lengths at that half-mile pole. Again, none coming from dead last at the half-mile pole. Some takeaways: likes to get good separation on the lead and routes. So when he's on the lead in a route race, he's a little over 1.5 lengths ahead of the second place runner. Again, no wins coming from dead last at that point. So now I'm really starting to think he likes to get his horses up close and not too far back, obviously. His highest average odds in routes came from front in routes. So 6.2 to 1. Again, only 2 wins, 11%. But coming in at high prices when he can stalk right off of the leader. And 58% of his wins come from being on the lead or within 1 length of the leader. So on the lead or within 1 length, you add them up, 58% of his wins were very close to the front. Now, if we compare the sprints versus the routes, my key takeaways: his highest win percent is lead in routes. So his percentage of wins were the highest on the lead in routes. Does not win from last, so never had a last place finish going back, I think, at least this whole year. Sprints or routes, never dead last at that 3/8, quarter mile, or half mile pole. averages more than 1 length on the lead in both. So when he takes the lead, he really likes to have a nice gap between him and the second place horse. 1.1 lengths in front in sprints. Of course, they're shorter races and at a quicker pace, so probably harder to get further away from the field. But even in routes, 1.6 lengths ahead of the second place horse. Lead, press, and closer all average a half length difference. Just something I noticed. I don't know how it really plays a role, but if you notice the lead in sprints to the lead in routes, a half length difference. Same on front runners, so it likes to be right up close. Half length difference between sprint and route here, margin wise, and same with here. All just a half length. Just something I noticed. I don't know what to make of it. Likes to get wider margin on the lead in routes, so you would think dead send runners in sprints. You would think maybe he'd get out to a further lead in sprints because the horses are going all out, but it's actually the routes where he likes to separate himself from the pack. His longest overall average odds are front for routes. So 6.2 average win odds. Again, only 2 wins out of his, I think it was 19 total. So 11%. But yeah, up front in routes seems to be his bread and butter. Longest average odds for sprints were the pressers. So a little bit off the pace. Stalking 1 to 3 lengths behind the leader were his highest prices. Also 31% of his wins in sprints were from this far back at high odds, so that's something worth noting. Lowest average odds are press and route. All I could really glean from this is that if he's on a favorite and it looks like he's going to stalk from 1 to 3 lengths back in a route, he's probably not going to mess it up too often. A decent win percentage, but he's pretty well backed. He seems to be getting good horses that have this running style and route. They're well backed, so make of that what you will. And his lowest win percent is closer and sprints. Of course, we're taking off the last place because there's no information to go off of. But when he's closing in sprints, only 10% of his wins come from there. He just does not seem to be a closing type jockey. Likes to get his horses out quick. And when he is a front runner, likes to separate himself and tends to do pretty well in the front running capacity. So something I will look forward to, added on to what I've discussed about Isidro Tamayo and Jamie Thomas, last year's Sacramento and Pleasanton leading trainers. So if we can combine this jockey with those trainers, I have a lot to go off of. But yeah, I just wanted to take a look at who was the leading jockey and take a look at some of his wins and how he was winning and at what odds he was winning. So I hope some of this information is pertinent to someone out there handicapping. I look forward to playing Sacramento this coming Sunday. I'll try to come out with a Weekend Warrior video where I'll do a quick scan through all the races and let everyone know who my picks are. But until then, thanks for watching. Hit like or subscribe, share with friends. I'd really appreciate it. But good luck to everybody and see you all next time.